Hello, and welcome to the Healing Dreams Project, exploring projective dream work for your health and wholeness, with hosts Billie Ortiz and Dr. Royce Fitz. I am the producer, Viviana, and today's special guest is Laura Deal. She is the founder of the First Church of Metaphor. She is a certified dream work facilitator through the Marin Institute for Projective Dream Work. Laura will help you understand the deeper meanings of your dreams. She's also an author, a poet, storyteller, dream reader, and teacher with a wide variety of artistic and social interests. She loves the use of juxtaposition of images and words to shake loose creative energy. Welcome, Laura Deal.
Hey, Laura.
Thank you so much.
So glad you're here, Laura. You're one of my dearest friends. I've known you for so long. We've shared so many dreams together. It's great to see you here.
One of the richest dreamers ever in my projection.
And I'm excited about your poetry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm very delighted to be here.
So our first question is always, tell us about how you got involved with dreams and some of your history.
All right. Well, let me pull this up. So I always start this story with, I was about this old when I first realized dreams really had some deeper meaning. And I had a dream. I was the youngest of 3 kids. My parents were understandably stressed and used to argue sometimes. And I had a dream that they were raising their voices with each other, and I crawled under the dining room table where they were standing and began to cry. And they stopped their argument and looked under the table and said, "What are you doing under there?" And the energy in the room shifted, and the dream, I don't remember anything more. But then a few weeks later, my parents did start having a raised voices conversation, which I was very sensitive to. And I remembered this dream and crawled under the table and began to cry, as only a 2-year-old can. And they stopped their argument and looked under the table and said, "What are you doing under there?" And I thought, aha, you know, there's something to all of this, and I should pay attention. Unfortunately, my parents were both mathematicians, and dreams were not to be paid any attention to, just utterly dismissed. And so then I read a lot of books and was curious, but then when I was 39 in 2000, was when I first met Jeremy Taylor, went to a workshop with him at Naropa here in Boulder. And that's where I met Billie for the first time as well. And Jeremy became my mentor. And I started going to Billie's retreats and found a real community and a family there. And yeah, it's still my primary spiritual practice, I think. I think work in dreams builds compassion, and we need a lot more of that in the world. And the community there was very kind and let me share my poems, encouraged me to share my poems. So I can read one of those now if you want.
Please, thank you.
Lovely.
It's all about, this one I wrote for Billie for her birthday, thinking about the retreats. It's called Dream Mother. After the dark dream, when the image lingers like an answer whose question is forgotten in the stark light of day, the dreamer needs her sisters, those who can speak of blood and the fragile wings of hope in one breath. those who know a woman's secrets. After the wild dream of running naked in the street, the classroom, and the office, the cloak of the dreamer is the only clothing that suits. The fabric of projection bunching and smoothing the wrinkled edges of awareness. After the terrifying dream of storms and floods and drowning, the dreamer needs her clan, a family birthed from dreams, nurtured by the dream mother who holds us in her awareness and gentles our fevered fears. After the glorious dreams of celebration, of awareness expanded, the dreamer wants only to sit with those who understand, whose hearts are open, whose bloodlines matter less than their dream lines, who find their family where dreams gather together and speak.
Every single time you read that, I feel like I just want to burst out crying. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. I always get that the dream lines matters more than their bloodlines. That's the one that always gets me. It's beautiful. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for giving me yet another platform to share my poetry.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Do you want to talk more about your poetry book? Should I bring up the image of it so we can or did you have more of your slideshow?
I have it in the slideshow, so either way.
Okay, great. Why don't you go ahead and continue sharing on your end?
Okay. So yeah, those retreats, they were really something, and I'm looking forward to them getting started again post pandemic time.
Yeah.
So yeah, the retreats also encouraged me. One of the things that grew out of them was the Waking the Dreamer Within festival, and Billie produced that, and a bunch of us jumped in to be part of it, and I used it as a deadline to pull together my book, which is part memoir, the story of that friendship and that community growing and my path through it, and part dream symbol dictionary.
This book,
all of that. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, this book, we all study dreams and look for resources, etc. So I've read a lot. I have loved this book from the first time that I read it, because it had a kind of spiritual practicality, kind of that weaving together. And I remember reading it 2 or 3 times when I first got a hold of it. And I would keep it close to me, like, oh, I need to kind of settle back into this. So this has been a gift to me, Laura, and to the world.
Oh, thank you, Royce.
You're welcome.
I do appreciate hearing that. Yeah, it just felt like it was part of the work that grew out of that synergy of Billie and Jeremy working together and building that community. And then the other book that came out of it was my poetry book, Marbles, which I just read from. Yeah. And it has several other dream poems in it. And, Jeremy was one of the kindest human beings ever to walk the planet. And so, of course, he would say very nice things, but he had very nice things to say about this book. And I was grateful that it touched him as well.
Yeah. Oh, every single poem in here is so sweet. I love the poem that the title's based on, Marbles. It's a beautiful, beautiful poem. And then all the different pieces of Laura's, I see it, Laura's life, blossoming and as a mother and growing into womanhood. So it's phenomenal. I love it. I go back to it often.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had fun putting together the cover for this. These are marbles, some of which were found in my garden, which that poem is about. And this is in my garden. So it was
Are there a couple of little Aggies in there?
a little what?
Types.
Aggies, little Aggie marbles. Do you remember those little Aggies? They were always precious in the marble game.
And there's also a couple of, you can see me in a couple of them. In the upper left, there's a shiny one that has a reflection.
Yeah.
And the bigger blue one, you can kind of see me against the sky.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had never
that's
noticed
great.
that before. That's cool. That's the secret part of the marbles cover.
Right.
It reminds me of a dream where you can see it from different angles.
Well, and it reminds me in that sense of Jeremy's dreams, you know, because Jeremy and I exchanged a lot of dream work, and towards the end of his life, he had more and more experiences of dreams sort of held in bubbles, all happening at once. And he could hold them all, or if he zoomed in on one, the others kind of vanished. It was just astonishing imagery.
Amazing.
Astonishing is a great word for that.
Yeah. So let me stop sharing there. Should I talk about First Church of Metaphor a little bit?
Well, sure, that would be great. And then I was going to ask you about storytelling after that. So why don't you go ahead and tell us more about First Church of Metaphor?
Do we address you as the Reverend Doctor as we acknowledge your
as we used to with Jeremy?
as you First Church
Well,
of Metaphor.
Well, this came out of a retreat. This was one of the retreats up at up behind Loveland. What's the name of that?
Sunrise Ranch.
Sunrise Ranch.
And sorry,
and we were
just
talking about
for the people who are not seeing the slideshow. This is from firstchurchofmetaphor.com. If you would like to take a look.
Oh, thank you, Viviana. Yes, First Church of Metaphor. Yeah, we had been sitting around talking about starting churches. I think one of the other participants was interested in that and talking to Jeremy about it. And he firmly believed that you should just be able to start your own church. And I said, if I were to start a church, it would be the First Church of Metaphor. Took off from there. So it became this website, started in about 2012, and started as a place for art and dreams and different ways of looking in the world. It's more focused now, particularly on dreams. Because my lauradeal.com website is more for my storytelling. So, but yeah, I have posts about dream symbols, and some of the imagery that goes with those.
Great.
So,
yeah. I love the title, The First Church of Metaphor. It's just beautiful. And I remember discussion. I remember that discussion because Jeremy kept saying the one thing this country got right was freedom of religion. And so he said that, we should all, have some sort of organization that we can call a church, and gives us a lot of freedom of expression. I think he's right about that. So
yeah.
I believe this is the retreat in which there was a woman in attendance that was being ordained, and Jeremy gave the ordination blessing. I think it was at this retreat. Is that correct?
Oh, that's way back. That very early on.
Is that before Laura's?
Yeah, I think that was before this.
Yeah.
They all blend together.
I know. Tell me about it. Yeah. But you were about to say something, Laura?
Oh, I was just going to say I post various things, and then all sorts of people write in to the website and comment on posts and share dream snippets. And
great.
I will say in the last administration, the top post was on tornadoes. which I thought was really interesting, including an orange tornado.
Oh, very interesting.
And the second most popular post is dreaming of being the opposite sex.
Yeah.
So I think it ties in with the work that I'm doing now. So we can talk about that later, or I don't know what's next. What's the next?
Yeah. Well, I love your storytelling, and I've been very blessed to have seen you live many times. And I know that now things have changed quite a lot because of COVID, and you've had to perform more via Zoom. But tell us a little bit about why did you feel like storytelling was the next step?
Well, that was an intuitive tug of the heart, just like all the important things I've done in my life. I think the real pull came when I used to go to the Conference on World Affairs here in Boulder, and they would bring in Liz Weir from Northern Ireland and Claire Murphy from Ireland, and I would sit in the audience and listen to them, and I would think, I should be doing that. I should be doing that. And I did a training with a group that I was also interested in intergenerational work, and I did a training with a group that trains elders in the art of oral storytelling and then sets them up as volunteers in the schools. And so I started that. This is my 6th year, and I go in once a month to various classrooms. Right now I have 2 kindergarten and 1 first grade classroom, and share traditional tales from around the world. Absolutely my favorite audience. Really love working with the kids. And it was kind of an empty nest project. I started exploring all the different ways to do storytelling. The first time my sister heard me perform in public, she said, "Oh, that reminds me of when you were 15 and we were stuck in a hotel in a storm and you made up a story and told us a story for 2 hours straight." I was like, oh yeah, I guess I have kind of been doing this my whole life. So it followed my heart right into it.
Yeah. So I know you have a really exciting upcoming project, and I don't know if it's too early to mention this or not, but the work you're doing with the Chautauqua organization, is it? Or
yes, and let me pull up an image for you for that as well, because I have a really delightful image. Yes, that was another follow your heart.
Yeah.
Follow the intuition. And I saw this announcement for a training for, hang on, for doing this Chautauqua training, and had a very strong intuitive tug for that. And my initial thought was, so Chautauqua style storytelling is you take on the persona of someone who has passed from the physical realm, and you do sort of a 40-minute presentation as them presenting their work to the world, focused on the humanities. This was a grant from the North Dakota Humanities Council. And then take questions, still in persona, for about 10 minutes, and then questions as the scholar. And I saw that announcement and I thought, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that. And my second thought was, I have plenty else that I should be doing. Why would I take that on? But I went ahead and started looking into the application process. And originally I was thinking of doing Georgia O'Keeffe. And the deeper I got into it, and the more I realized she had some 900 paintings, I thought, I don't know if that's going to feel right for me to be trying to remember all the paintings. And I'm not, I do paint, but that's not my main thing. And then I was in conversation with Billie and expressing this this dilemma that I was feeling. I wasn't sure that this was what I wanted to do. And Billie said something along the lines of, well, I know who I would be interested in is Marion Woodman.
If it were my
And
talk.
it was a ding, 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 ding kind of moment. And so I have been doing a deep dive into Marion Woodman. And I will.
You're mentioning Marianne Woodman, and you're using the word Chautauqua. And I'm not sure all of our listeners know either of those words. Those are the name or words. And can you say something real quick about Marianne Woodman and then Chautauqua? What in the world is that? Although Chautauqua, it's one of my favorite organizations in the world.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So I just wanted to bring up this caricature. This is a drawing by Tom Chalkley, who the North Dakota Council on Humanities got him to do caricatures of all 12 figures that the scholars in this cohort are presenting. And I love that he got the yin and yang in there, because Marion Woodman was a Jungian. She started out as a teacher. She taught high school drama and English, poetry, and soon paired up with the phys ed teacher to do very embodied work with the poetry. She did that for about 20 years, but was also suffering from anorexia. And then had a moment on the street in Toronto where she could not summon the physical energy to stop a taxi, and decided to take herself off to India. And in India, met what she felt was an expression of the Black Madonna, the wild goddess, the goddess of death, the goddess of, just unrestrained passion, creativity. And she subsequently went into analysis, and then she trained at the Jung Institute and worked as an analyst for another, 20 years probably. And then in her 60s faced some other health challenges. She eventually recovered from the anorexia, and that led to her first book, first and second book were about that. The Owl Was a Baker's Daughter and Addiction to Perfection. She worked with a lot of women who were struggling with anorexia. And then she got on the lecture circuit and popularized the need to recognize the feminine in the world, and the new masculine that she saw coming in. Sometimes worked out through her marriage, and her husband Ross was willing to work on his own projections, and she would say that they were married 4 times because they reinvented their marriage consciously and with full awareness. So she was an amazing character. And the Chautauqua tradition was originally in the 1800s. Scholars in the humanities would tour around and give speeches to large groups, and bring education and lectures and things that might not have been accessible otherwise. And then I think it was in the 70s, don't quote me on that, the movement had kind of died out, and it was revived in this new form with people taking on the persona of important historical figures. So
the original Chautauqua was in New York, Chautauqua Lake, New York, and was started by the Methodist Church, of all things.
Oh, really?
as a Sunday school training program for people out in the frontier, white people's words for frontier, out west. And there were these tours, and they eventually morphed into what became this amazing presentation of what you've described, Laura. And there are only two Chautauqua organizations left, one in Boulder, Colorado, yay, and the other in Chautauqua, New York. And so they still have major programs that follow along the spirit of this line. So for you to move into the Chautauqua method of communication is truly a natural movement for you, and a great gift for all of us that you're a part of that. And to do Marianne Woodman as one of the presentations, it's like, wow, it just weaves so much together.
Yeah, and the other thread that gets woven in from my life was before all of this, I got a PhD in history. And so that's, bringing all that historical perspective. And Marianne Woodman was born very close in the timeline of the 20th century to my own parents. And so it feels very integrated with my life.
Phenomenal being. I'm so glad you took me up on my suggestion. I was just thinking, if I was going to do this, wow, I love, because she's just one of my heroes, and had a lot of poise and strength. And I mostly, I kind of came into her work sort of at a latter part of her work when she was working with Robert Bly. And because Robert Bly did so many of the men's conferences, and that balance of masculine and feminine between the two of them, I thought was brilliant. So, I'm really glad. I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. So, all right, great.
Yeah.
Well, are we at that point where we might want to share a dream? Do you have a dream snippet that you brought? Or is there anything else you want to tell us about? So we'll just mention your websites again, just so everybody listening knows.
Okay, so we talked about First Church of Metaphor, which is just all one word.com. And then my storytelling is primarily on lauradeal.com, LAURADEAL.com. And I also wanted to mention that one of the gifts of storytelling with the pandemic was some friends started Artists Standing Strong Together. And it just celebrated its second year in existence. They are two professional storytellers who came together and said, people are going to lose everything, all of their income with this shutdown. And so they started the Storyteller Relief Fund, the Monday gathering, which is on Zoom, which has been going for every Monday except Memorial Day and Labor Day for 2 years now. And everyone is welcome. Don't have to be a storyteller. We do all sorts of different things. And they
What is
do
the website for that?
artiststandingstrongtogether.org. And they also host a camp. Kids who are interested in storytelling can work one-on-one with a storytelling mentor. They get put into a sort of pod, and so they get one-on-one time, and then they are in a group with 3 other pairs, and there's a host. And I have personally mentored students from the United States, Canada, and Uganda. We've had students from 5 continents and hosts as well. So it's an astonishing thing, and we would love your support. I'm on the board for that because I really believe in the work that they're doing. And then they have the Storyteller Relief Fund that they started right away for people who needed immediate, got to pay the light bill kind of thing.
Yeah.
So really good work in the world.
So all of this will be on the podcast notes, all of this information that listeners can go to the show notes. Yeah.
Laura, I just love how you say that you follow your heart and intuition, and it's brought you to dreams, across poetry, into storytelling, getting a PhD in history. I'm just in awe of that process, and it's very much similar to my process. But I'd like to hear, how has that thread been for you?
It took me a long time to trust it. And I will say this work with Marion Woodman is resonating on many, many levels. I remember so the poem Marbles that Billie talked about earlier a lot was about the expectations that I had growing up, what a woman's role in the world would be. I should meet my husband in college. I would stay at home and I would have kids. And that was what I wanted. And there was no husband from college. And there was no husband in my early 20s. And I had to figure out how to support myself. And my 20s were really hard. And I finally decided to go back to school because I was good at school. I knew how to do school. My parents were academics. And that was when I first started praying to a female deity, framing God with a feminine metaphor. And the resounding reply that I got was, "It's about time." And I think
Laura,
that was
what nudged you into that very bold breakthrough of embracing the feminineness of the being? What nudged you?
Royce, that could be a 3-hour answer.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
I was always, I think I was always chafing at the limitations that had been put on me, especially as a woman. I had encountered a lot of sexism at that point, and I was raised Methodist and then a little bit Unitarian in my teens. So, the Unitarians probably helped me think outside that Methodist box a little more. But I'd kind of never resonated with our Father who art in heaven kind of, authority feeling figure. I identified much more with the feminine, and it seemed to me at that point even that God was not some person up in the sky, that we were made in God's image as creative individuals versus God looks like a Homo sapien. And so I think it just was a natural step. There was a certain amount of desperation in it, it's like, I want my life to be going better.
Right. That certain amount of desperation was God is given. That, and thank you for struggling with the answer. I didn't mean to make you stumble. And I love the stumble. Thank you for doing that stumble for us.
Yeah.
And the breadth of what this brought you into.
Yeah.
Just a footnote about how the divine often shows up in our dreams. The masculine form of God often shows up as a disembodied voice, and the feminine often shows up as a lovely big black woman or a lovely voluptuous woman embodied. So in my version of what I just heard my friend Laura share, it's like there's a part of me that needed to be more in tactile contact with the divine rather than seeing it somewhere outside of me or overseeing my life, and I call it the Santa Claus God, watching out, is everybody doing, is everybody being naughty or nice, but this is one of my personal hits about why so many people dream about Oprah Winfrey, because I think Oprah Winfrey, she has this abundance of billions of dollars on top of her lovely, beautiful body. And so in my take, whenever she shows up in someone's dream, it's like, oh, we've encountered the dark goddess. She's here. This is it. So anyway, that's just a footnote about maybe helpful to other people listening, but it's this idea of am I in direct contact or not? So that might be a good segue if you want to share a dream snippet. It feels right.
Sure. So I have been dreaming a lot, and just recall has just been bits and pieces that I'm able to bring over. And so I have 3 short bits from about a week ago.
Oh, okay.
The first is I have to find a place to spend the night, but it's already 10 p.m. and the people I'm with want to go see someone else first.
Okay.
And then I think part of that same dream, there's a group that has just arrived with a baby, and the baby is feverish. And I discuss with the adults about whether they can all stay and where we will all be and who will be in what rooms. There's concern about this possibly being COVID, but certainly something, that could be contagious. And then the very last scene, I'm in a room. It's just kind of a normal living room kind of space. And there are 2 naked men standing, talking, just waiting for another person to arrive. And there's no sense of this being anything unusual or untoward in any way. There's no sexual overtone to it at all. But yeah, knowing what I would project on all of that, I thought I'll bring those bits to this dream share.
And these were all dreams in different times, different time frames, but within the last week.
These were all one night.
Oh, one night. Okay.
So these feel like parts of the same dream. The third scene, I'm not sure if it was, contiguous in time, but it was contiguous in my recall.
So in the last piece there, the living room where I see the 2 naked men standing and talking, am I part of the conversation, or is that just standing there watching? And I'll rephrase that a little bit. Do I feel like I'm a disembodied observer, or do I feel as though I'm part of the scene?
I feel like I'm present in the scene. I'm sitting on a couch.
Okay.
But I'm an embodied observer, I would say. I'm not like interacting with them directly, but I'm definitely there in the room.
And does it seem as though their conversation is friendly, or like they're going to have some sort of argument, or just seems
very calm? Yeah, there's just kind of hanging out, waiting for somebody else to get there. And as I was thinking about this dream and what they look like, I only really remember one of them. And I would say he is in his late 20s to early 30s, dark hair and kind of a short beard, facial hair.
Okay.
I like how dreams like these little snippets, and especially in the same night, how they, at some level, in my projection, if this were my dream, they're building one upon the other. And there is a beautiful, as yet unseen in my projection, connection. That one of the first words that comes to me in my projection is what is being revealed in the end. And how better can I experience revelation than to be naked in my dream? And so there's this place in my projection where I don't know where I'm going to stay, and I do feel a kind of lostness in my projection. Where am I going? And other elements, other parts of me want to do one more thing, or want to see another person. It's like I'm being torn. And this baby that has fever stands out to me. And my empathic concern and worry, my parental, fatherly, motherly concern. And what are we going to do? And then there's this revelation in the end. So that's where I need to stop, just to process this revelation of these aspects of what is being revealed.
Nicely said. Yeah, when we have these like these dreams that want to stay together in three parts, I often think to myself about past, present, and future. Like, are the dream snippets commenting on each of those stages of my life? It's very interesting to me that it's specifically 10 p.m. It's not like 10 or 11 or 10:30 or anything. So 10 p.m. for me, the number 10 is about starting a new cycle, the end of a cycle. So I'm ready to start something new. So once we hit 10, it's like, okay, and it's also the Wheel of Fortune in the Tarot. So for me, that first bit's about how as the dreamer, I'm about to embark on a whole nother journey in my life. And we just, as we just heard through the interview, I, as Laura, I've had all these different stages of my life and all these different projects, and it's as though there's going to be another one I'm on the cusp of something else very new. And I think that's why the baby shows up in the second piece, because for me, babies are they're one of my very favorite dream symbols. I have to say, they're one of my very favorite dream symbols, because it talks about something that I'm birthing into the world that I need to give unconditional love to in order for it to survive and thrive. And this baby's sick. This baby has a bit of a fever, and there's concern about contagion. But so it's not my baby in the dream, right? It's somebody who arrives with the baby, right?
Right.
And the baby's approximately how old?
Oh, probably 6 to 9 months, somewhere in there.
Okay. And that's a great age for babies, but since it's not my baby, it's someone else's baby. Do I care for it in any way? Do I hold the baby and put a cold rag on its head or anything?
No, my whole role in it is trying to figure out where everybody's going to stay. Where am I going to put all these people, all these parts of myself?
All these parts
Where
of
do they all
go? and the new part of myself arrives and creates havoc. Yeah. So exactly. And I totally get it. So if it were my dream, I would go back 6 to 9 months. What did I birth 6 to 9 months ago? That might be asking me for a little bit more attention, because it needs care, even more care than what I'm dealing. All my other projects need my attention, but this particular new one needs help, specifically more care, more close care, because as though when we have a baby 6 months old with a fever, it's like, oh, I got to drop everything right now and help the baby get better. So if that were my baby, comes up.
Yeah, I definitely have an aha with that. So another big piece of my life is I was appointed the family historian archivist, and it was about 6 months ago that I did a show about my grandfather based on his letters. And I do feel a great amount of pressure to settle these family archives somewhere other than in my basement, preferably some kind of library or historical society or something. And that pressure feels more intense now, after the Marshall Fire. And just realizing, I think I always knew, I've always been afraid of something like that happening to the archives. But having it play out so close to home really was a wake-up call. So a lot of our my spouse and I are spending a lot of time figuring out how to do fire mitigation around the house. So that ties in with that sort of feverish feeling too of something burning.
Yeah.
If I could
Go ahead.
jump in, if this were my dream, dovetailing on what's already been said, it's interesting for me to note that the first two dreams I'm placed in a setting of concern. In the first, I'm concerned about where to spend the night, yet other people want to see another person first. So my needs are not being addressed, and I feel a pressure. And then the baby comes in and it's feverish, and again I'm concerned about it becoming a contagious element for all of us in the group. And then it's interesting for me to realize that when the two naked men, balance of some kind, two naked men are standing there talking, I'm not concerned, they're not concerned, and I'm just watching. So it's interesting that I'm concerned at first, yet something that might be concerning in a normal situation, I'm not concerned at all. And the 10 p.m. numerologically, is that a word, speaking? I might shave it down to 1, and 1 in the tarot is the Fool. So again, dovetailing on what Billie said, 1 is the start of commencing of a new journey.
1 is the Magician, 0 is the Fool.
That's right.
So maybe it's the Magician and the Fool showed up together. It could be. But no, that's I love what you just said, Viviana. That's important because I'm distressed, and sort of in the first 2 pieces there's like a level of distress, and then the last piece is like, there's something being conferred and agreed on in my version of it. The two and nakedness in a dream is again one of my favorite symbols because it's our most authentic self being shown. And I'm not, as the dreamer, I'm not naked, but I'm standing there with 2 naked men. So these are the parts of me that represent the masculine energy of being able to move forward with the project that I need to move forward with to preserve the archives of my family.
I think it's so fascinating to listen to all 3 of you discuss this, and in my projection, it just verifies the beauty of projection and how we can embrace this dream that the dreamer had out of our own story, out of the tarot, out of another angle, another perspective. And the dream then becomes ours for us to be nourished. And I'm curious how the dreamer holds these projections right now. What is this like?
Oh, I'm definitely having ahas on a lot of this. Having done a lot of dream work myself, the 2 naked men felt like, here's the twins, something new coming into consciousness. The 2 of something is often a pointer to that. And just the work I've done with the Marion Woodman writing and all of thinking about the new masculine, and conversation I just had with my spouse the other night about I just got a haircut, and when I got my hair cut short, it was long until I was 52, and then and I felt more like myself than I had ever really felt. And so I think there's this externalization of wanting to bring the masculine and feminine together. So I'm having ahas with all of it, it feeling like all the projects that want to happen competing for my time. And
the word metaphor has I suppose in the last 30 years has been one of my favorite words. And here I'm meeting the woman the dreamer who has founded a church of metaphor, and how all of us, when we are projecting, are using some aspect of metaphor to describe how we experience meaning and beauty and adventure and tragedy and sorrow, and put all this together. We tell our story that way. And I hear the dreamer describing the integration of many elements and energies coming together to be lived out, in the waking world. That there is such a thin line between the dreaming and the waking world, and how I can live this out in the waking world and help the world to change for the good.
Yeah, excellent. Very nicely said. Thank you.
It's always my prayer.
In the Church of Metaphor, that is my prayer as well. Amen.
Thanks, Laura. Wonderful. Is there anything else you want to say here at the end to close up? Any other thoughts or anything else you want to express before we do our closing piece?
No, I'm grateful for the dream work and the conversation, and it was lovely to sit in dream space with you all.
Well, we're really great. It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for coming. And we'll let you know when it's released to the public, which is going to be happening soon. So,
Excellent.
So I'll say a couple of things in closing. Viviana, you want to say something before I go, or anything else?
Well, I just want to make sure our listeners like the podcast, subscribe wherever you're listening, and share to your friends. And this helps get the word out. This has been the Healing Dreams Project podcast. Billie, why don't you tell us where people can get in touch with you?
Okay, you can reach me through my website at wakeuptoyourdreams.com. I host 2 dream groups each month, one in the evening and one in the afternoon. So all the dates are up on the website. And I have other projects coming up. One is that I'm going to be presenting at the Shift Network, which will start for the DreamWork Summit. And they're going to have the registration opens around April 17th. So keep an eye on the website, and you'll get more information. And one other thing, I gotta always remember, we have a dream hotline where people can call in and leave a message with a little snippet of a dream or question about a dream symbol. And if we can, we'll try to share the audio on the podcast and give you a chance to participate. And that number is 720-573-9195. And you have a little under 3 minutes to leave a message. So please do.
Say the number again.
720-573-9195.
We could almost make that a poem.
A little
Perhaps
jingle.
With a little jingle, yes. You can reach me at roycefitts, FITTS.com, spiritual counseling and dream work. This has been a real wonderful experience to step into the beautiful world of metaphoric dreams.
And one last time, perhaps, Laura, just tell everybody again where they can get in touch with you.
So you can reach me through either of my websites at firstchurchofmetaphor.com or lauradeal.com.
All right. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you
see
very
you
much.
in the next episode of Healing Dreams Project podcast.